Hello everyone, welcome to the Editorial Edge. I am Bhuvan for the Editorial Edge on the 14th of July. This is just past 8 am. In fact, I am a minute late. Alright, welcome everyone. Firstly, before we begin, very quickly, just let's do all systems check, because we have been having heavy rains here. As you can see, I'm quite drenched. So let's do an all systems check. If you can hear me alright, see me alright, look at the screen behind me alright, then we shall begin. Alright, let's get started. It's an interesting day. It's a big day for us, Chandrayaan 3. Good morning, Arka. Very, very good morning to you too. Madhusudan, welcome. All of you guys are most welcome. Thanks for joining on this. Thanks Madhusudan for letting me know. Alright, so important day, Chandrayaan 3 at 2:35 p.m. Alright, momentous day it could be for us. In fact, it will be for us. But if you haven't got the sense of what Chandrayaan 3 is, I suggest go ahead, look at last evening's video that was there on Study IQ IS. You'll find it under the videos tab. Look at the whole end to end of it. So if I ask all of you, okay, Arka, you have given me an idea. You know what? Let's start this session today with around a couple of questions. Okay. So if you have seen the Chandrayaan 2 video, Chandrayaan 3 video of yesterday. So let's see. You have LVM 3, you have a propulsion module, okay, you have a lander, a rover, and an orbiter. Alright, so which of these is not a part of Chandrayaan 3? Let's see. For all those of you who have seen that video or have gained substantial information on Chandrayaan 3. One of these is not a part of Chandrayaan 3. Which one is it? Let me know very quickly. Alright, so for those of you who are unable to answer this question or are finding it difficult, I suggest go ahead, look at that video of last evening. We have discussed the end to end of Chandrayaan in less than 10 minutes. Okay, so it will help you. And so you should be in a position to know everything beforehand, before 2:35 p.m. If you sit down in front of your TV sets, looking at Doordarshan from 2 p.m. onwards, I suggest you go ahead and look at that video first. As civil service aspirants, you ought to know everything. Good, Madhusudan. Badhiya. Alright, so on the agenda today, we have 3 topics, okay. 3 very short topics like I had mentioned in my Telegram channel. So all 3 are to be primarily looked at from the prelims perspective, okay. The mains question shall follow on the Telegram channel later today. For those of you who have sent me answers for yesterday's questions, some impressive answers on road safety, I will be responding to all of you very soon. Okay, let's look at this question then. Many countries in the global south are characterized by low income, dense population and poor infrastructure. Hi Sai Krishna, good morning. No country of the global south is located in the northern hemisphere. Israel, South Korea, Japan and Australia are also part of the global south. Well, identify the correct statements for me, because once again what we see is that this term is frequently used in our newspaper analysis. Very frequently used, okay. In fact, if you're looking at the Hindu or the Express on a day-to-day basis, you will find that this global south makes appearance on almost every article. Yet, what's troublesome is that not many students understand the global south. So we'll take a look at global south today first. Basics. If you understand the basics, बाकी सब हो जाता है. ठीक है? So let's see. Give this shot a go. Without googling, give this shot a go. What do you think is the correct answer? How many of them are correct? 1, 2, 3, 1 only, 2 only, 3 only. How many statements? Okay. Madhusudan says A. Alright, Madhusudan. We'll take a look. Good answers, by the way. Rest of you, go ahead and give it a shot. Alright. So the 3 topics that we're looking to do today. First one, an in-depth look at global south. Alright. Thereafter, we'll look at the Atal Vayu Abhyuday Yojana in the news because of the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Okay. And we will take a look at senior citizens, okay, the contribution of senior citizens in the economy, as well as how the state can support them, say, after they are past 60. Okay, that's important because again, they are a major part of our whole national infrastructure. Their experience is invaluable. So you need to study about them. Okay, the challenges that they face, the problems that the senior citizens face. In fact, if you have the elderly around your home, you will see the problems that they face on a day-to-day basis. So how should the government support them? Okay, we'll look at that today. And the third one is to do with outer space law. Now, ideally, I would have wanted to do an in-depth on India-France, Okay, India-France relationship, the 25 years of our strategic partnership. We started our strategic partnership in 1998. However, it's not just a 25-year-old relationship. Since, in fact, we were colonized, we had areas that were under French possession. Then we had Indian soldiers who participated in the war. So it's a long history when you look at India-France. So that will require a lot of understanding. We'll do it in depth probably tomorrow. Okay, let the outcomes of the meeting come first. All right. Good morning, Bipin. In fact, if you have been following the news, you must have known by now that the Defence Acquisition Council, the DAC, okay, which has recommended that during this trip, Rafale deal be signed, the second phase of it. Rafale, 4 more Rafales, I think, and Scorpion class submarines are coming to India. Okay. So again, this is, how, from the mains perspective, therein lies a question of political will. Yes. Because there was a fair amount of controversy, you will remember, during the first purchase of the first set of Rafales. Even then, the government of India has gone ahead and recommended through the Defence Acquisition Council to get more Rafales from France. Right. So therein lies a mains question. We'll look at that in depth tomorrow. Alright, so this is our agenda for the day. 3 topics, all prelims oriented. Let's get to it. Okay, so now this is the world map. Obviously, you must be knowing that by now. The equator will pass somewhere through what, this area, roughly. Right, this is our equator, 0 degree. So now what do you find? The global south is not a term that is used geographically. It does not mean that all the countries of the global south are in the southern hemisphere. No. In fact, what you find is that 2 of the major the players of the global south, okay, India and China, they are part of the northern hemisphere. You find the sub-Saharan Africa also in part of the northern hemisphere. So what you find is that this global south is not a geographical connotation. This is in fact a term that has developed over time. So first you had the term come such as third world nations. If you have gone through, say, previous year newspapers or articles, you will find this term used frequently. Third world nations, developing nations came later. In fact, third world nations hi hame refer kiya jata tha. Now there was a problem with that. Firstly, offensive, absolutely. Okay, and that negative connotation, that they are the outcast ones. So eventually this term developed to replace those third world nations. First takeaway. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at the theory first. So Carl Oglesby, he first used the phrase global south in 1969. Alright. And he used it as a euphemism. What is a euphemism, guys? Again, a little bit of seaside we shall also do. Hi Tanu, good morning. Yes, correct, Bipen. Not Bardent line, it's Bart line. We'll do it. Okay. So look at this now. What does euphemism mean? When you express something very harsh in very soft words, that is euphemism. Harsh sentiments, but very politely. So this term eventually developed as a euphemism for developing nations, LDCs, and other similar expressions. In fact, the commonly used term used to be third world nations. This is how we used to get referred to. Okay. This was obviously, a atrocious term to use. Hi, good morning, Monica Thakur. How are you? Welcome, welcome. Okay. So it is to characterize nations whose economies have not yet reached their full potential because of a host of reasons. So you are characterized by low per capita income, unemployment, scarcity of capital, lack of civil rights also is included in this. Okay. Lack of a stable political structure is also included in this. Because again, the West assumes that, well, these guys can't self-govern. These guys are not good enough. Yes, which is why we were referred to as third world. Then finally, Carl Oglesby came and finally decided to coin this term, global south. So many people, like most of the students, would incorrectly believe that south means southern or southern hemisphere. Don't make that mistake. Good morning, Bulbul. How are you? Welcome, welcome. Okay, do not make that mistake. In fact, what you find is that many countries of the global south, so-called, are in the northern hemisphere. All right. Most nations in the southern hemisphere are considered part of the global south. However, this is purely an economic phrase, not a geographical related entity or term, guys. Okay. Hence, Australia is referred to as down under, but is not considered a member of the global south. In fact, you have countries like Australia, Israel, Japan, UAE, all of these countries are not considered a part of the global south because again they are rich countries, they are well endowed countries. Okay, so broadly comprises countries in the regions of Africa, Latin America, Caribbean, Asia. Which one do you exclude? Israel, Japan, South Korea. Obviously, if you look at their per capita, all of these three things that we saw you know, the per capita income, unemployment and scarcity of capital. What you find is that these states are quite well self-sufficient there in fact. Okay. And in Oceania, you're looking at Australia and New Zealand. Again, quite major powers, you know, and they do not suffer from all of these, which is why they are not considered a part of the global south. All right. Now, what you understand is that there is no definition of global south per se. Okay. The UNCTAD office maintains this list. Okay. You suppose like you have the World Bank index. No, World Bank releases say developing nations, developed nations, all of that is done. So a categorization is done by World Bank. However, this is like a purely a broad term that is used. Okay. So global south is not just about geography, plus it just does not include say countries that are poor or in a particular area. All right. And there is no particular list. It's a broad, exhaustive term. So the global north, the richer nations that are located mostly Northern America, Europe, with some additions in Oceania, which we are looking at is Australia, New Zealand, all of these. Yes, the well-endowed countries. Okay. Now, there is no strict criteria, like I told you. Okay. There is no fixed list that is maintained. So again, if the question asks you that global south is recommended by some World Bank report or UNCTAD report, no. This is a broad term. Okay. So, no strict criteria which constitutes the global south as opposed to World Bank's very specific guidelines for what is not a low income economy. Do you realize? So, there might be a overlap there. So, you have say World Bank report that says say, certain countries are low income and they will be a part of the global south too. Get this clear first. All right. Now, developing nations were referred to as third world, a term coined by, well, not important for us to know because again, this is an outdated term. This is again an offensive term. Bulbul has a question, why China? Well, China is essentially again still a large, even though it is, you know, growing at a massive scale, it has pulled out people from say poverty. It has done that exceptionally well. However, realize that global south is also to do with colonialism. Okay. You realize now the connotations coming up. So it's not just an economic term again, it's also you are looking at it from the historical perspective. The colonizers versus the ones who got colonized. So you must know now. So China also had its own set of troubles. India obviously colonized for a long period of time. So this led to a lot of mismatch. Again, we go back to the discussion of say which country got the first opportunity to exploit resources and then misuse that opportunity to build a power structure wherein they were able to assert on the other countries which were in the global south. Which is why, you know, the negative connotations of industrial revolution is the birth of colonialism. In fact, it's a misuse that was done, you know. So you realize it's just not an economic sense again. You're looking at it from the historical perspective also. Anything but the geographical perspective. All right. So what happened was this term was offensive, associated with poverty, instability and negative stereotyping by the West. Thus, this became a more acceptable term. Okay. Which is why now you will find articles saying India is the voice of the global south. It does not mean that India is speaking on behalf of all nations of the southern hemisphere. No. It is speaking about a group of nations that are say politically probably not as mature as the West, have a large demography which is again probably impoverished, poor. Yet at the same time all this has happened because they were colonized, which means they were not given the same opportunity to develop as the West. So now India, being one of those countries again, has decided to speak up. Now you might argue as to why not China? Why not China? Which is a fair question to ask. And we'll also discuss how the Indian model of diplomacy is different from the Chinese model of diplomacy which is why it better positions India as the voice of the global south. Okay, questions, answers, in fact, that you can use in your mains also. All right, so let's go forward. So the Brandt line, as I think Bipen mentioned, right? So the Brandt line now, a visual depiction of the North-South divide proposed by the former Chancellor of West Germany. So now this is a line which he said was essentially the division, the marker line between the rich nations, the colonizers versus the colonized. All right. So remember this from the pre-perspective, guys. So this line divides the world at a latitude of approximately 30 degrees north, passing between the US and Mexico, north of Africa, Middle East, climbing north. So look at this, essentially following this particular trajectory, excluding Australia and New Zealand. You see, again, not very developed, extremely underdeveloped, developing, still developing. Whereas look at this, highly developed, well, they can afford to take straight away a challenge from them. Plus they do not, Russia, well, obviously is an independent entity altogether. So you realize this is how the demarcation has been done between the global north and the global south. Understand? Clear, everyone? So now this demarcation is important. Why? Why do you think this demarcation is important, guys? What does this demarcation serve to do? Can someone let me know in the chat very quickly? Why is this demarcation important? I'll tell you why. See, look at this. Because of this line, now you are able to determine which countries are underdeveloped, which countries are, say, probably not doing well as compared to the West. Clear ho raha hai aapko? So this demarcation is important. Why? Because eventually the whole problem is of climate change. Eventually, these countries in the south, the global south, are more at risk from climate change than, not this obviously, than from the other countries. In fact, the effects of climate change are being disproportionately felt by the global south. So for example, you do have, say, ice that melts from here. Sea level rises. Please realize, people here, extreme poverty. People here still, we have, even though we have done well, the multidimensional index has said that we have done well, but please realize that the effects of climate change are disproportionately felt by the underpoverished, the poor segment of the society. So which is why the global south now has a very good locus standi to say what has the global north done to address it. So do you realize all of these COP, climate change agreements, all of that is essentially to do with this duality, this duel that is happening between the global south, the global north. In fact, you must have noticed, say, these small island states. So their foreign ministers, their forest ministers will be standing deep knee in the sea and addressing the United Nations. Why? To bring attention to the fact that they will be the first ones that will sink in Micronesia. Right? So this is important. Please get the feeling first that, okay, it's just not a geographical concept. It's to do with economics and history. At the same time, you're also looking at the future. Clear? Correct, Tanu. 415 million people we have pulled out of poverty, but then still again, just look at the current rainfall that is happening. The current rainfall scenario. You look at, say, people, just yesterday I was seeing a visual of people who live in the floodplains of the poor segment of the society who live near the floodplains of Yamuna. Now they are having to leave their whole house, baggage, everything, and they are fearful that they will never get to come back to that place. So they are left homeless. See? So, and again, you and I might be slightly inconvenienced. Yes, हमारे घर में पानी घुस गया and all of that, fine. We are not losing our homes. Our homes are still there. So, any such climate disaster or ecological problem, like, disproportionately affects the poor people. Where do the poor people live? In the global south. Clear? All right, let's go forward. So, the challenges for the global south. Now, let's look at this first. The green energy fund that I was referring to. Okay. The global north, the primary polluters, are hesitant to pay for the funding of green energy, for which the ultimate sufferers are the least emitters. In fact, we have discussed this previously, no guys, that for example, carbon emissions in India versus, say, the emissions in USA or the EU, all right? the nature of it is extremely different, and that is important to understand first. It will be a very uninformed opinion to say that, okay, carbon emissions are of the same nature across the world. No, they are not. For example, in India, suppose if someone does not have access to LPG, they are going to burn firewood so that they can cook their daily meal. So yes, it's a polluting process, but it is necessary for their sustenance. Whereas in the West, you have, say, people who are flying private jets to attend climate summits. So there it is a luxury. For us, it is a necessity. Do you realize? So that is important. The nature of emissions is important first. Okay? You're looking at it qualitatively, not just quantitatively. Which is why, say, you have Government of India policies addressed to that particular segment. I have a question. Yes, Lekam. Does that line have any particular name? It's called the Brandt line. Lekam, this is the line. The Brandt line. Okay, it was named after the former West German Chancellor who came up with this concept. Okay, in fact, he wrote it in a paper. I forget the name of the paper. It's not very important to remember. But he was the first bloke who came up with this line. And then he came up with the theory that, okay, it's a lot to do with the colonists, the colonizers versus those who got colonized. Take a Lekam. All right, let's go forward. So please understand this, the nature of emissions is also to be debated. It's not just say who is debating the more, which country has the more per capita emissions. That is obviously will come at the bottom because our denominator is quite high. But in terms of the nature of emissions, our nature of emissions are inherently different from the West's nature of emissions. That right now, if we are say doing a carbon intensive process, it is to build infrastructure for the population. Whereas there, the nature of emissions is different. Now you're adding value to the infrastructure there, which may or may not have certain tangible outcomes. Samajh rahe ho aap? Thereafter, you're looking at the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Again, you have, say, wheat supply that was inordinately affected. Ukraine was the biggest supplier of, say, edible supplies, which were used to go to sub-Saharan Africa. Now, overnight, their supply chain was compromised. पहले तो area impoverished, malnutrition is 100, like a lot of malnutrition there. Violence, civil strife, lack of political stability, human rights are trampled upon on a daily basis. All of that is there in that area. And now you suddenly don't have food. What's going to happen if you don't have food? People are going to lose their minds. Yeah, it'll be chaos. Anarchy will set in 30 days. So once again, global south affected. Why? Because some country in the global north decided to sort it out between themselves. Do you realize how global south is getting disproportionately affected? Okay. Severely affects the LDCs, aggravating the concerns related to food, to energy and finance. Primarily this is the major crux area, problem area in fact. Okay. Then you are looking at the rise of China. Now what happens? With the rise of China, you have, say, these countries, understand it in a very simple manner. ताकि आप भूलेंगे ही नहीं. Look at this. So you have a set of countries that are poor, the global south. Okay. You have the global north, which is non-committal, okay, which is in the habit of shirking responsibility. Then you have these international institutions, IMF, WTO, World Bank, all of these. Now when they go and ask for money, they impose conditions. When they go ask for money, the rate of interest is too high or the payment terms are too coercive. Okay. Or there are certain conditions always attached to it. Enter the new player, China. Says, you know what, I'll take care of all of this. However, what I need in return is an asset collateral. Give me something in asset collateral for the money that I'm giving you, and it is all sorted. So what does China do? There was a vacuum that was there present. Because these LDCs, the global south, was not getting the finance that they needed to invest in their own infrastructure, in say mitigation and adaptation for climate change, many other things. Okay. If you remember the Mozambique example, we have done this in this class, no? Mozambique was hit by a major cyclone. They went to IMF. IMF said, we'll give you money, but then it will come with a particular cost. Then the whole world was up in arms saying, what are you doing, IMF? You know, Mozambique, firstly, an LDC, they are hit by a cyclone, which is not their doing. Their infrastructure is finished. They go asking for money and you are saying that, okay, coercive terms of payment now. Some 5%, 10% rate of interest was proposed. Eventually, 0% interest loan was given. Do you realize? So global south will obviously feel aggravated, like what nonsense is going on here, right? So China enters, says soft loans, easy loans I'll give you, asset collateral you give me, the rest is sorted. Eventually now people have realized this model is called debt trade diplomacy, wherein you are using, say, the financial muscle of China to increase and improve its expansionist outlook, right? So again, China's hegemony, the BRI that has become a flagship of Xi Jinping, the Belt and Road Initiative, and the associated debt trap diplomacy. Yes, this has again created problems for the global south. What was supposed to be a collaborative project has now become a coercive project. Do you realize? So, Chinese interference in the sovereignty of the states. And if this was not enough, you have already the first hegemon there, US. So, in North India, no, whenever there is, जब धान को पीसा जाता है ना, so there is this small, I can say insects, animals, I don't know how do you say that. So, they are also crushed in that dhan ka pisna. These small countries are becoming that small thing that just gets crushed between two major powers. So where does India come into the picture now? Because these are problems that are with the global south, a reality of the global south. So this positions, all these problems that you see, no, inadequate to resources, prolonged impact of COVID-19. See how India has used this to her advantage. What you realize is, in fact, I wanted to do this also today. The prolonged impact of COVID-19 on the global south is inordinate. You're not just looking at, say, from the health perspective, the economics, the finance, the access, the lack of access to opportunity and bouncing back. Global south is disproportionately affected. Okay. So, India's say Arogya Maitri, where we sent vaccines. We had these projects, no, where we send vaccines, free vaccines to countries in Africa, in this and that. So many areas we sent. Same thing, the Western countries were like, they were charging money. In fact, in this GAVI, the Global Vaccine Alliance, this also was inadequate. In fact, it was India that finally came up, with the vaccines that we had and made sure that at least the large majority of the global south got it. Okay. You look at, say, access to resources and tech. What does India do? India also gives soft loans, but the terms of loans are not coercive like China. And the terms of the loan is not like what IMF and World Bank gives, where they will ask you to make some structural changes within your economy, basically infringe on your sovereignty, your decision making regarding your particular country. IMF and World Bank will be like, we know best. Correct, Bulbul, Madhusudan, aap log sahi bol rahe ho. That is the word, ghun, yes. Do you realize? So this is where India comes in. Plus, India has a special relationship, at least not an alliance, a strategic partnership with the United States, which means it gives some negotiating power when it comes to speak on the behalf of the global south. Okay. At the same time, India is competing with China. Okay. Positioned itself neutrally to the Russia-Ukraine crisis, and obviously vocalizing for the green energy, for climate sustainability. If you look at, say, India's statements that have come recently, as recent as, say, the G7 summit in Hiroshima. Yes. India is speaking for not just itself, it is speaking for all the countries of the global south, saying if you want us to benefit out of the structures that you have, you need to include us in that participatory approach. Have us as a part of the group where we also have a voice in the decision making. Okay, so let's go forward. How has India done what it has done? Look at this. Collective representation. In fact, you had a summit earlier this year. The Voice of the Global South Summit. That was, I think, in Delhi itself. Yes, check whether it was in Delhi or was it an online summit. I'm not sure. But this summit was held earlier this year in January. Okay. Once again, India vocalizing on part of this group of nations. Okay. And what did it say? Multilateral institutions to be reformed as soon as possible. The Prime Minister making the statement in the Hiroshima summit in front of the leaders saying, you know what, if you want United Nations Security Council or the United Nations as a body to not go the way of the, say, League of Nations, become obsolete completely, useless, then go ahead and reform now. Now is the time. If you don't do it, far too late. Because the global south is anyways aggrieved. Firstly, historical problem that they have, historical injustice has been done. Because of that, there is contemporary injustice, present day injustice. And because of inaction today, there will be injustice in the future. So unless and until you reform the institution, this cycle is going to continue, which means the global south, the underdeveloped, will remain underdeveloped. Are you able to get it, guys? So India's outreach, we had Arogya Maitri, Global South Summit, we are giving scholarships, okay, Center of Excellence, so many other activities has been done, which shows India's willingness to engage with this set of countries, okay, and which is why India becomes like a very uniquely positioned country to speak on behalf of these countries. Because again, India has also risen up. It's not like they are talking, the Indian government is talking without having actually done something. You see UPI now going into, say, several areas. Yesterday's announcement, you can use UPI in France also now. Singapore has done it, right? Digital inclusion is happening. So obviously, India, and if India is sharing it free of cost, no strings attached, what does happen? The global south will come to India or they'll go to China, okay? So taking a lead in the South-South cooperation, that countries in the South support the South whichever way they can. Okay, don't just be dependent on the North. Yes, we will hold them accountable, but let's have mutual cooperation also on common areas, energy, on finance, on rights. Okay, that is being done by India. And in its development partnerships, India's approach has always been consultative, outcome-oriented, demand-driven, people-centric and respectful, which is a stark contrast to the model of China. Okay. Yes, China will give you huge amounts of loans, but in return, you compromise on your sovereignty. India does not do that. In fact, this is the major point why, say, you can see countries coming and largely associating with, say, recent membership in BRICS or recent membership, say, in these alliances that happen. Why do you think the African countries are suddenly migrating towards India? Why is it? Because again, we are very equitable in our approach. We don't come from a position of authority. Respect is important in international affairs, which India gives and takes both. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and give me the answer to this question then. Okay. Brand line याद रखेंगे prelims के लिए, please. Okay. Rest of the class, go ahead quickly. Answer this for me. Many countries in the global south are characterized by low income, dense population, poor infrastructure. Correct. No country of the global south is located in the northern hemisphere. Incorrect. Israel, South Korea and Australia are also part of the global south. Incorrect. Identify the correct statement. Hi Bhaskar. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome. कौन सा मधुसूदन सर प्रोलॉन्ग वाला पॉइंट रिपीट कौन सा पॉइंट मधुसूदन थोड़ा सा एक बार एक्सप्लेन कर दीजिए प्लीज आई एम अनेबल टू गेट द पॉइंट दैट यू आर रेफरिंग टू okay let me know Madhusudan, I'll get back to the topic for you. All right, so take a sip of your chai because the next topic coming up in a minute, as this announcement very quickly, the UPSC 2024 last chance, go ahead, long term batch for next year. Okay, the way we go ahead and approach every topic every morning here, you have seen this, which is the approach taken for each single topic to make sure that you are armed with the thoroughest of knowledge. Okay. And this is done from the prelims perspective, the mains perspective, the interview perspective. And I have said about this in this many classes. For any serious aspirant, I would recommend it for sure. Okay. So 3 languages, the course being offered in. I am associated with the English batch. Go ahead, use the code BALIVE. You can sign up on studyiq.com, wherein you will also find a brilliantly designed brochure, which will tell you about all the key deliverables that are associated with this particular program. Okay, so go ahead. I think the classes are beginning on the 22nd. This is the second evening batch. The first one has already started. In fact, that batch is progressing along extremely well. The morning batch, the first morning batch, again doing extremely well, packed to capacity. In fact, this is the second of the evening batches coming up on the 22nd of July. Okay, COVID-19 impact. COVID-19 impact, no, Madhusudan. So if you look at it, say most of the Western countries have come out of, say, the coronavirus pandemic, okay, and their economy has rebounded. However, what has happened with, say, the poor countries, or say not a lot of the developing countries, that they are still, negotiating the after effects of coronavirus. Okay? and that you are finding, say, the people who were pushed into poverty during the coronavirus pandemic, that the nations are unable to pull them out. Why has that happened? Because of a host of reasons. Lack of access to opportunity. Okay. Say supply chains that were earlier established now do not exist. Now the demand for that good is not there. Product is not there. So you are finding these resource-rich countries which have been unable to harness. Africa, for example, the whole continent, resource-rich, but unable to harness it for their own benefit. In the aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic, you are finding more and more people pushed into poverty. समझ रहे हो? Correct. Most of you guys are correct. Bulbul, have a relook. Okay. Have a relook at the question. Okay. Atal Vayu Abhyuday Yojana. So a few years ago, there was this movie called Johnny Gaddar. I don't know if you've seen this movie. It was a noir movie, but a brilliant movie. Okay. And in that, there was this dialogue by Dharmendra, the evergreen Dharmendra. He had said it's not about the age, it's about the mileage, which is essentially what old age is all about. Most of us would tend to dismiss the experience and the ability of our senior citizens. However, it's not about the age, it's about the mileage. So let's look at it. The Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment has come up with this project, the Atal Vayu Abhyuday Yojana, to empower senior citizens. Can someone tell me what's the All India helpline for senior citizens? It's called Elder Line. What's the phone number for that? Let's see. Let us see. While the impact of COVID will be seen for a long time in the global south, vaccination program for other diseases, absolutely, Tanu, you make a very fair point. That the whole focus is on COVID-19, the economic fallouts of it, the health fallouts of it. We should do this, The prolonged impact of coronavirus on the global south is something that needs understanding. You have given me good ideas today. Madhusudan and Tanu, thank you. We'll do it tomorrow. You've given me a good idea. Okay. So let me know, ये helpline का number क्या है for the elders? So the National Action Plan for Senior Citizens, now that has been renamed as Atal Vayu Abhyuday Yojana, AVYAY. Okay, SCSS, Central Sector Scheme, improving the quality of life of senior citizens. Now what is the focus? Basic amenities like shelter, food, medical care, entertainment opportunities by encouraging productive and active aging. That you do not just suddenly become useless after you cross the age of 60, that you have a lot to offer to the society, not just in terms of experience but also ability. Okay, because this is an arbitrary line, no? If you have parents in the government service or any sort of public service, and if they have retired, go and speak to them. You will understand that it's a very arbitrary line. That okay, suddenly till 60 years you are the senior most in the department, and then as soon as you cross 60, you are okay, no more required. How does that work? How is it that says judges can go ahead till 65? How is it politicians can go up till 70, 75, self-imposed again? But civil servants, government officials have to relinquish their responsibilities at 60. Why? Why is there no uniformity? These questions should be asked by you. Okay. So you're looking at encouraging these senior citizens. So how are you looking to do that? The schemes for them. Integrated program for senior citizens. Make a note of this. This was asked in a previous year question, or I think it was asked in one of these CDS, NDA paper or CDS paper. Okay. So have a look at this. This gives financial assistance to the elderly care homes. Okay. The Vriddha Ashrams as they are called. Or the senior citizen, I think it's senior citizen homes only. Yeah. Okay. So you give money to these so that they can take care of the senior citizens. In fact, in the Western countries, you have assistance facilities. Alright. So the state action plan, SAP, SRC, each state is expected to plan and strategize their local considerations and frame their own action plans for the welfare of the senior citizens. Important, Rashtriya Vayushri Yojana. Okay, you will find the Prime Minister often coming and as a part of a Rashtriya Vayushri Yojana program, which will be overseen by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, the Prime Minister will come and will say, give away that many physical hearing aids or walking sticks or crutches, wheelchairs, spectacles, all of that are given free of cost. Okay, provide physical aids, all of this. Okay, then you also have a senior able citizens for re-employment dignity. See, the sacred portal. that senior citizens don't become useless just because they have turned senior citizens. That's a very uninformed point of thinking. Okay. So for that, a portal has been created, the sacred portal, to bring employment seeking senior citizens and those who are willing to give them jobs, to harness their exceptional experience for the company's benefit or for the organization's benefit, as well as giving them meaningful employment, a dignity of life that is associated with it. Okay. Action groups aimed at social reconstruction. Agrasar, senior citizens are encouraged to form self-help groups. The collective negotiation ability is given to them. Okay. And elder line, the national helpline, 14567. Clear? Make a note of this because this is what you are going to write in your mains. As well as, यहाँ से सवाल प्री के तो बहुत आते हैं. You can straight away realize the number of questions I can frame from here that is designed to confuse you. Okay. So go ahead and make a note of this slide. Okay. Right. All right. So with that, we come to the end of the second topic of the day. Very quickly, just leave me a like for all those of you who are watching this. If you're learning something, say regarding Global South. Okay. Because again, if UPSC asks you that whether all the countries of the Global South are in the Southern Hemisphere, you will say a vehement no. Okay. Know about these basic facts, guys. It's the basics where you get caught out. Thereafter, know about the senior citizens, every damn detail you have to know. And finally, we come to this because again, today at 2:35 p.m., India is headed to space, to the moon. And so I thought that, well, let's look at the outer space law. Okay. What is the outer space firstly? That is a bigger problem. That is a bigger question that is straight away asked. So the definition of space, because any law, it needs to be absolutely demarcated. So the problem with outer space law now begins with the fact that there is no uniform definition of space. There is no uniformity. Okay. That is the problem. So for some countries, they will say 50 kilometers. Some will say 100 kilometers above mean sea level. So now, if you do not have agreement here only, क्या law बनाओगे आप? ठीक है. So we need to understand outer space law. Please understand first that outer space in itself is the common heritage of mankind. It belongs to all of us equally. At the same time, it does not belong to all of us. Okay. That it does not belong to anyone. You go there, it's on behalf of mankind. Like Neil Armstrong said, no? Small step for man, huge step for mankind. Same thing. Leap for mankind, yeah, the same thing. Alright. So look at it. UN has recently released a policy brief, the future of outer space, recommending the development of a new treaty. Why is a new treaty required suddenly? Arka. Sir, please start analysis of the Indian Express in English. Arka, in fact, if I were to be very candid with you right now, I can assure you that the topics we do in this particular class, right, are designed in such a way that you pick up the Indian Express of say any day in the last 7-10 days, you will find that we have discussed that. And we have discussed it thoroughly. Okay. And that is the point of it. So what I do is, if I am given say the multi-dimensional poverty index that came out on say Friday or Sunday, right? After that, we have discussed it in yesterday's class. Now, if you find any other article on say MPI, on multi-dimensional poverty index, you will be able to understand it in toto. So this topical method is what we have chosen for this particular session. Alright. So newspaper analysis mein hota kya hai? For example, I'll tell you why I do not do that. So you have say 10 articles that are listed. Okay, I can give you a list of 10 articles that, okay, these are important and these ought to be read. Right. However, please also realize that the 10 articles will require you to go into the depth of understanding. Just mere reading them is not good enough. You need to understand it depth mein, and you need to understand from the pre up until at least the mains. If not the opinion based questions, at least the mains. Okay. Which is why we do this topical approach. And if you guys so desire, the class so desires, then we can change it. Let me know in the chat. Okay. If you would like me to do say the article basis way, okay, fine, we can do that. Or if you'd like me to do this topical analysis so that you're able to make sense of any article under the sun, including say important articles that I find in the other portals, then that you can also tell me. It's completely your call, guys. completely your call. ठीक है? Whichever is the will of the class shall be accepted. All right. Okay, so development of a new treaty to ensure peace, security, and the prevention of arms race. So what happened is the Outer Space Treaty, which is considered say the Magna Carta insofar as space governance is concerned. Now that is very specific in saying that you cannot carry out weapons of mass destruction in the space. However, WMDs are a specific category of weapons. Then there are other missiles also, so many other things are there. The Outer Space Treaty is silent about that. Okay, so we'll understand that. So you have the workings for a new treaty now that has started. The report released ahead of the UN summit for the future. This summit in next year, no guys, 2024. For those of you who will be appearing, God willing, in next year in the mains, this summit is going to be absolutely crucial. This is like, how when SDGs was being announced, so that year you can imagine civil service wale kitna padhe honge. Same thing for you is this year, because this is essentially going to take a look at the sustainable development goals that are to be achieved by 2030 and what else could be done to make sure that we achieve this. Okay, so summit of the future next year, okay, to find multilateral solutions to global issues and challenges. So ahead of this summit, you find that there are rumblings of a new treaty that is designed to protect the space. All right. So the key issues that have been raised in this report. Firstly, you're finding increasing satellite launches. Many countries, private bodies, all of them are now launching satellites for their own particular purposes, which means more space debris. Space debris के बारे में पढ़ा है आप लोगों ने? Where you find the low Earth orbit, the LEO. It is full of remnants of previous launches or satellites that have been discarded, or all of these objects that are flying in space, loose objects from small in diameter to huge. Now all of these can potentially impact detrimentally a new satellite that is launched. All right. So you're finding this is space crowding is happening. Then there is lack of international framework. So you have absence of an agreed international framework on space resource exploration. In fact, the question that was so arising, that when people eventually go onto the moon, so the Artemis mission is happening, China has its own mission, India has its own mission. So eventually when people go onto the moon, to the South Pole, say if India creates a base there, China also comes and creates a base there, will we follow the Arctic Antarctic model or will we do something else? How will it work, the moon colonization? Because eventually you are going to have to cooperate. It should be like an ISS model, an International Space Station model, where countries are coming together for the common good of mankind. If that does not happen, if resource exploitation takes precedence, countries will not cooperate, right? So what happens then? There is no framework to decide what happens then. It will be a free-for-all. Then you are also looking at coordination and space traffic management. In fact, those of you who have attended the orbits class that we had done, you will know that the GEO, the Earth, a particular satellite that is going around it, you need 3 of them to effectively cover the Earth. Remember we had done this, which means there is limited space in that orbit. Countries have already gone ahead and taken that geostationary orbit. Now, if a new country wants to come, say at the same latitude, different longitude, they want to say, okay, give me a slot 2 at that orbit. There is no slot left. What do you do then? Who determines? Is it the first person who reaches, makes a seat for himself? Is it like musical chairs? No. The opportunity should be given to equally to all countries. Right? Remember we have discussed this, where only there are 3 locations equidistant from each other, which you need to cover the whole Earth. Remember this, guys? So what happens then? When countries develop, say, the spacefaring ability, they are also going to want to put a satellite in the geostationary orbit. How are you going to satisfy those countries then? Because the space is already taken by Russia, China, United States, India, all of these countries have come up. What happens then? So there is no framework to determine it. Okay. So let's look at this now. The 5 major treaties, guys. Okay. Just remember this one more important than the rest. Alright. So the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, the Rescue Agreement, which essentially determined if someone were to get lost in space Or if a rescue mission were to be carried out, how would that be done? Okay. Liability, who is liable if something goes wrong? Registration and Moon Agreement. By the way, Moon Agreement is also signed by Pakistan for some reason. Okay. Okay. Just a useless fact for you. So anyways, all of these 5 treaties are based on this principle. So make a note of this. The res communis doctrine. Very, very important. लिखिए इसको, अगर कहीं एक नोट बना सकते हो इसका बना लो. So our outer space is governed by the res communis doctrine, which essentially means that all space belongs to mankind. At the same time, it does not belong to anyone at all. That it's a common good, a common heritage, a common thing that can be used by all mankind. Res communis doctrine. Okay. So what do you find is India is a signatory to all 4, however has not ratified the Moon Agreement. This has not been done. India has signed and ratified the rest. Right? So now the questions arise. Who owns space? Obviously no one. That much we can realize because this doctrine says that no one owns space. However, who owns the resources of space? Because once again, peaceful exploration is allowed, which is why humankind is going to, say, the moon or the Mars. Peaceful exploration is allowed. In that process of peaceful exploration, when, say, India lands today, the Chandrayaan 3 leaving at 2:35 will land on August the 23rd. Eventually, all of that is there in the project, comes back, and okay, we can figure out that we can land in the southern part of the moon, near the lunar south pole. Okay, what happens then? Once we set up a base, we have access to resources. That is still peaceful exploration. Okay, so once you set up a base, other countries also come and set up a base. Competition happens. How does that go forward then? समझ रहे हो? The problems associated with the space race is not just here in the earth. It's also what happens when the space, the ISS, in fact, the International Space Station. Russia has said it will exit the International Space Station in the coming years because obviously Russia and United States are not friends. What happens then? Because China's Tiangong is already there and it is going to stay for a longer time period than the ISS. So you realize there are so many connotations to, say, space governance. It's not just about the law, it is also about countries coming together, finding solutions for common good. Okay. So there was another thing called Bogota Declaration. Now you don't need to remember it from the exam point of view per se, but then just understand. So when this outer space treaty was signed, so you have, say, countries, okay, all these countries. What they said was that the air above our land up until space belongs to us completely. Okay, that this is ours, you cannot infringe it, right up till the space also. It's all ours. But the problem with that is the earth is, so the space is also changing. So it's again a dynamic thing that is evolving. It never caught on. So it has been tried, in terms of space governance, attempts have been taken to determine, say, the boundary first. But there is no general consensus only. Like someone said, Karman line, 100 kilometers is considered to be. Some countries say no, it's 50 kilometers. So then again, no international framework. Okay. And then you have anti-satellite weapons that have come up, the ASATs they are called. With the advent of ASATs now, you're looking at this problem getting complicated. That a country has the ability to shoot down a satellite. Maybe its own. China did it itself. China shot down its own satellite and some of the debris fell in Japan. In fact, a Russian case was there. I think it was, I forget the name. So Russian satellite, while entering back into the earth, something wrong happened. Most of the debris fell in Canada. Canada went ahead and launched a case against Russia in the International Court of Justice. Okay, the ICJ it went to, saying this was a contravention, that its security was impeded. And because the space debris, the debris fell near a lake, near a water body, more problems, more complications. However, nothing came of that case. So do you realize the complications arising with such space race happening, space debris, launch of new satellites on a daily basis, lack of space, orbits की जगह ही नहीं है, parking के लिए जगह नहीं है आपका satellite का. How are you going to do? Which means outer space law needs to be defined, and the first step of that has been taken by the United Nations ahead of the future summit next year, the summit of the future. Clear, guys? Make a note of this before we go forward. And yeah, that brings to the end of this class. Your intensive 1 hour session exactly. 59 minutes is what we have taken. Any questions? I'd be happy to take them. Else, please consider leaving me a like. Please do consider leaving me a like, a statement, a comment. If you did not like something, if there was a mistake I made, let me know that too. Okay. I had a student who in fact corrected me, the 18 to 25 age population group on the comment box also. So I appreciate that. It's always a collaborative approach that I encourage. So let me know. Any questions, anything at all, I'll be happy to take them on, or else I shall let you go. However, please do consider letting me know if the topical approach is for your benefit. If you're understanding the topical approach, good. We can continue with that. My plan was originally to continue with this up until say the end of mains. After that, we can completely go ahead and shift towards the whole prelims perspective. Solve a lot many questions, because right now you must be seeing that I focus a bit more on the mains questions. Okay, but after the mains finishes, it's going to be at least 5-6 questions daily basis pe. Okay. I agree, Monica. That Bogota declaration is what you're referring to, I hope, and not me. But yes, that Bogota declaration was stupid. Alright guys, so if there is no other question, I'll be happy to take your leave. I will put on the PDF of this in my Telegram channel, which you can join by scanning this. At the same time, the mains question for today shall also follow afternoon on my Telegram channel. For those of you who are always a part of this, thank you. Stay tuned, stay joined, send me your answers. And I'm extremely happy to see some of the answers. Okay? Okay. ठीक है दीपक, let me know guys, let me know. आप लोग chat box पे भी लिखेंगे चलेगा. I shall respect the will of the class. Alright? Okay. Thank you guys. Till I see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. in the editorial edge, and this evening at 9 p.m. in another topic of interest. I'll let you know, I'll update all of that on my Telegram channel. Study well, take care of your friends and family. The weather is not very conducive. It's raining outside also right now. So be fine, be safe, and I shall see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Have an excellent day, guys. See you.